You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Canon Fodder.
Grab your bookmarks, it's time to take cover as we unleash the Canon Fodder over the Star Wars galaxy of literature. On this special edition of the show, my co-host Mark Newbold talks to Amy Ratcliffe about her new Star Wars book, Star Wars The Jedi Mind, Peace, Knowledge, Harmony and Other Lessons of the Force, out November 10th from Chronicle Books. The book looks at the well-being concept of mindfulness and integrates it with Star Wars quotes and lessons, including breathing, posturing and meditation. Ratcliffe is the writer of Star Wars Women of the Galaxy and will be part of the upcoming A Certain Point of View, The Emperor Strikes Back collection of short stories, as well as the Target exclusive Ellie and Me coming out in November before April 2021's The Art of Galaxy's Edge. Let's join Mark and Amy.
So we're joined today by Amy Ratcliffe, and we're going to talk about The Jedi Mind, which is a new Star Wars book that's coming out very, very shortly. Amy's going to tell us all the details about it. Hello, and welcome to Canon Fodder.
Hi, Mark. It's nice to hear your voice. I almost said it's nice to see you because I'm so used to video calls these days. But we're talking via audio only, which is a blessing for you because I haven't brushed my hair yet.
Oh, I've not brushed my hair either, so I wouldn't worry about it. This is very old school, isn't it? Yeah, I think everybody's Zooming now, so to do Skype like this feels like we're back in the 1800s.
We're just going retro today.
Well, we wanted to get you on the show to talk about your latest book, The Jedi Mind, which, if people haven't already heard about it, is, I described it to you a moment ago as left of centre. Would you say that's a fair way of sort of summing up what this would be in terms of it being a Star Wars book?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting beast, so to speak, in that it kind of mixes, real world self-help and real-world practices with Star Wars. And it kind of, we have, of course, the wonderful books, Be More Yoda, Be More Vader, etc., from Christian Blauvelt, and that was certainly an inspiration. But we definitely, with Jedi Mind, wanted to do something that, the Force, though mindfulness is not a word that exists in the Star Wars universe, the Force very much ties into mindfulness practices, and Qui-Gon, bless him, says a lot of things that are point on for mindfulness. So the book is really kind of meant to be like an introduction to mindfulness, which is a practice that's just about being in the moment, being present, whatever you're doing. And that really, once you focus on doing that, it can help. I'm a very anxious person. And I always tease I'm the 3PO, just always what's going on? What is happening?
Yeah.
And mindfulness helps with some of that. So it was trying to combine those elements, which I think are really helpful and have certainly helped me, with a familiar thing like Star Wars, if all of that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, because it is so unusual. I mean, when you go into the book, and I've had a read of the book and I loved it. I really enjoyed it because it wasn't what I expected it to be. It's surprising when you started joining the dots through the narrative of the book, and there is kind of a narrative to the book, that there's so many moments in the saga that are relevant to the sort of thread of the topic of what the book's about, which obviously we'll get into. When you went in, presumably you had a starting list of points to build on and things that you wanted to build it around, the obvious touch points. Was that how it kind of structured itself?
Yeah, actually, that was it exactly, because, think about Qui-Gon, going back to him, he has quotes like, your focus determines your reality.
Yeah.
Keep your concentration here and now where it belongs. Yoda has those. So I kind of started with the Force and the Jedi, and then kind of expanded out from there, anything kind of tangentially related to the Force, because it kind of all fits in a way that, Eastern religions certainly inspired George Lucas when he was thinking of the concept of the Force, and mindfulness, one of the pioneers / fathers of mindfulness was a Buddhist monk. Is a Buddhist monk named Thich Nhat Hanh. So it's all kind of a piece. So I definitely started with the Force, had those quotes that immediately popped to mind where I'm like, this is very mindfulness centered. This is very much about being in the present and centering yourself. And it's a lot of what's at the heart of what the Jedi try to do. And from there, it was, obviously we wanted to make a whole book and not just a list of like 5 quotes. It was really trying to, jog my memory and go back to some comics and books. And I started with like, okay, I know Yoda has some good ones. I'm pretty sure Bendu from Star Wars Rebels has some things that would fit. Yeah. And it was trying to pull together like things that made sense and also things that I could tie to actual mindfulness exercises that are brief in case people are interested, just like to get people to dip their toes in.
I was going to ask which is your favorite Jedi character, but I think I know it's probably Qui-Gon.
It really is, especially in this regard. A lot of what he says to, I almost said baby Obi-Wan, but he's not a baby. He's just younger Obi-Wan in The Phantom Menace. Yeah. Is about like, hey, like pay attention, be in this moment. And that's very much like at the key of mindfulness. Like if I think about myself and how much time I've just like spent spiraling in my life over what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen with this thing, or like thinking to a convention meetup 5 years ago where I said something awkward and, you're laying in bed at night and you're like, oh, I wonder if that person still remembers that time I was just weird. And
we've all done it. Yeah, I get that.
So if you practice these things, whether it's through meditation or through grounding exercises, it just helps your mind be like, yep, that we can acknowledge you said that, but let's not spend an hour laying awake reliving it and thinking about how it could be different because it happened already. You can't do anything about it. Or if it's the future, you're not going to be able to control it. So let's not spend a day with your like stomach cramping and your like heart beating fast because you're so worried about it. So Qui-Gon really kind of hits the nail on the head for me with mindfulness in regards to Star Wars.
It surprised me when I looked through the book that there are physical activities that go along with some of the thought processes, if you like, within the book. How did that become part of it? Because you mentioned you've looked at Eastern philosophy and different cultures and obviously a broad scope of Star Wars quotes, which can be pulled from anywhere across the last 40 years. So how did that aspect come into the book to bring that into it?
Yeah, that was a really important part of the book for me, rather, is that I wanted there to be, certainly this is not meant to be an academic textbook on mindfulness or a 101 book, but just enough to get you curious about mindfulness and to try it out and see if there's something that works for you, because it's not just about meditation. That is a way you can practice mindfulness, but it can be even as simple, I love to bake. And when I'm baking, when I'm measuring ingredients, like I'm not thinking about anything else. I am in that moment leveling off my cup of flour and concentrating. So you can find mindfulness in all these moments, but I really, with physical exercises, that's kind of a way, like not to trick your body, but like by doing breathing techniques. If I'm doing a breathing technique in the book, that's all I'm thinking about because I'm thinking about my breath. Or even if it's something like a mindful walk, where you're not listening to an audiobook or a podcast while you walk, while you're noticing, okay, how does the pavement feel on my feet when I'm walking? What does the air feel like around me? What do I smell in my environment? Like you're being present. So there are a variety of those practices in the book, whether it is a mindful walk, whether it's a stretch, different breathing techniques, writing in a journal, like things, any physical exercise, I guess. And that's kind of one of the beautiful things about mindfulness is you don't need any gear to practice it. And you can do it just even when you're like, waiting in line at the grocery I know I'm guilty of this. I take my phone. If it's a long line, I have books on my phone, so I'll read, which is lovely. But if you just like put that down and you're in a waiting room and you just be present, pay attention to what's around you and not distract your mind with something else.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark banthatracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
It really struck me in a way I didn't expect it to, because I know for me, with doing Fantha Tracks and doing the podcasts and writing for the Insider and all the other bits and bobs, and then just life,
Right.
real life work and a marriage and running the home and all the other things and friendships you have to maintain and all the other things that you do. And reading through the book, it really did make me think sometimes. I know I don't lift my head up to take it all in sometimes. It is that Ferris Bueller advice. And I had a friend years ago who I worked with who was, on the face of it, he was a punk. He had a Mohican. He was a proper pain in the backside. But he always had this phrase that came back to me after sort of 25 years since I've even seen the guy when we worked together. And this thing he always used to say when I used to get stressed about stuff, live in the now, live in the now. And it just took me to this, what you've written about, very much like, well, think about what's going on right now. Just like Qui-Gon said, be in the moment. It was deeper than I expected.
Yeah, and I think your past punk friend there nailed it. So I'm really glad the book resonated with that, in that way for you, because that's exactly my hope, is that it just kind of at least makes folks pause and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and that's something I could try, because like you said, we are all our schedules are so many, it's just a lot.
Yeah.
I think about my schedules. I mean, I don't even have a family, so on top of that, I don't have children, so I always think of all the things I do, and on top of that, so many people have children and more things to manage. I'm like, how do they do it? I'm so impressed.
Yeah. It's the old thing of you have friends who retire and they say, I don't know where I found time to work. It is an element of time management and personal, sort of judging what you do and how you do it. And this very much speaks to that. And when you went into this, was the brief to make it a Star Wars book giving Star Wars advice to Star Wars people, or was it taking the advice of Star Wars characters and relating it to the real world? What was the brief going in? Because it very much felt like that coming out the other side of it when I read it.
A little bit of both, which I know sounds like a cheat, but definitely when my editor and I were talking about this, and early on I went to my friend Drea, Dr. Drea Letamendi, who co-hosts Lattes with Layers with me, who's a clinical psychologist and works a lot in the realm of mindfulness at a university here in Los Angeles. I talk with her, I'm like, does this make sense? Because I wanted the Star Wars aspect in there, but I really did want to use those beats to introduce people to these mindfulness, these self-help practices. So I guess it is kind of more that it's a self-help book framed around Star Wars, because that's where I'm going to get the Star Wars audience.
Yeah.
With Yoda on the cover, I hope.
Yeah.
But so it's kind of bringing them into a self-help world. Will I get self-help people browsing at the bookstore, picking it up because it has Yoda? I don't know. I hope so.
Yeah. So
it was a little of both, but I definitely kind of leaned more toward I wanted this to be an introduction to first steps into a larger world.
Nicely
for
put.
Star Wars fans. Thank you. I went there.
So if you were walking into a bookstore, you were walking to Barnes & Noble or wherever it might be, or at the airport, where do you think your book would sit? Would it sit on the sci-fi shelf with the Star Wars books? Do you think it would sit on the self-help shelf? Can't even say it. Or,
that's a hard one to say.
It really is when you say it fast. Or wouldn't you mind where it's at?
I wouldn't mind, but I have a hunch that stores, and I don't actually know. Stores being what they are, as if I know anything about the inside operations of bookstores. I do not, but I imagine it'll be with the Star Wars books.
When you started writing the book, obviously your natural inclination is to swing towards the Jedi characters and maybe a little bit maybe towards the Sith characters, because there is some wisdom in what they say as well from a different angle. But were you surprised when you delved into it? Obviously, Maz Kanata makes sense because we know she knows the Force, even though she doesn't necessarily use it. But even characters like Finn get lines in there. Did the scope of what you were looking for in terms of advice and mindfulness expand beyond what you thought it would by going outside the boundaries of those sort of Force-using characters?
It definitely helped me broaden it, because, of course, we have a lot of tremendous thoughts and insight just from characters who, frankly, have more speaking lines like Yoda than some others. Yeah. But I also really wanted to represent new characters, and also characters who we know have the Force but didn't get to really showcase it. So we got to see Leia showcase it, but I wanted to make sure I included Leia in there. And Finn, of course, who we found out in a roundabout way is sensitive to the Force.
True, yeah.
in the sequel trilogy. And then, like you said, there's people like Maz who know the Force. There's people like Chirrut who know the Force. I don't remember if it made it in the final book, but I had a quote from Lyra Urso because she also knows the Force. So they kind of, by expanding outside the Jedi Order, who of course, follow in theory the Jedi Code and are very structured, I thought it would be interesting to connect with those who maybe didn't formally train or who are outside the Jedi Order entirely, because they're going to have a different perspective on the Force. I think they're going to be they're not going to have as many like blocks in front of them. Not blocks isn't the right word, restrictions, I guess, on the way they see the Force.
Yeah.
So I thought it was important to, like, how do they look at this? And do they think of the Force? Chirrut's, I am one with the Force is with me, is like mantra 101. Like, it's like exactly what that feels like. So it was interesting to just kind of push those boundaries a little and see how those not trained and wearing a robe and carrying a lightsaber view the Force, and how we can interact with it, how everyone can interact with it.
Yeah. Everybody's on their own journey, whether they're near the end or near the start or somewhere in the middle, like hopefully we are. But you had your own challenges recently with your own health. How important then, given that, and you're on the right side of things now, thank goodness, but how important or how useful was this book to you to get things sort of structured, or a pathway towards things being structured in your head? Because you say, we can all be anxious people, some more than others. And this is definitely a help to people who want to find it, to give them some structure and give them some little hints and tips and quick ways to sort of hit the reset button so you can start the day properly. How important was this to you when you were writing it? Because you must have come across some stuff. You must have had some moments with this issue that you had. How did this help?
Yeah, 100%. So I had done a lot of research for this book months. So I had, for those who don't know, I had open heart surgery to get a heart valve replaced, which obviously sounds like a big deal, but going into it, like, I don't think I quite realized, like, what a big deal it was. Maybe that was a little self-denial. So I had done research on this book for months and months before surgery. And then, of course, just like timing, and because I also procrastinate in life about everything all the time, I ended up largely writing the book while I was recovering from the surgery, which was quite a process. And, going into something like this, the biggest issue, I guess, or thing I grappled with is just fear of the unknown. I've not been in the hospital before more than one night for a broken bone. So this is quite a bit different in that way, and also relatively young for this surgery. So I didn't have a lot of peers or people I could talk to talk about what their experiences were like. So it was that fear, you can read things on the internet, but that got dangerous because all the things on the internet are usually the stories of how things go horribly wrong and not the success stories. Yeah. Which is not good to do. So kind of being aware, having all this mindfulness practice in my head, meditating regularly like I had been, I think helped. I was still, of course, scared, but I think it helped me I didn't really feel like I spiraled about it until the night before surgery. And I credit that to some degree in learning about just like spending so much time immersed in mindfulness and books and talking with Drea and trying all these things. So that by the time, I was home and recovered for I think I was just kind of chill on my couch for about a month, which is a person who likes to do things, I had a hard time with. But again, with mindfulness, I tried to just be in the moment and appreciate the time on the couch with my cat. And then as I was writing the book, as I started to feel better, I was, I'm not a writer who usually enjoys the writing process. I enjoy everything leading up to it, and then I really enjoy when it's done. Yeah. But this is one of the loveliest, least stressful times I've ever had writing a book, because I would just get comfortable on my couch with the cats and just chip away at it, and it came more easily than other writing has for me, for sure. And it was just such a peaceful subject to write about. So that was a bit of a long answer, but it actually ended up being quite a lovely thing to have with me in my recovery.
I can imagine, because given the situation as it wasn't like you had to be thinking about that many other things. You just had to focus on your recovery, and this feels very calming, very, you were on your own schedule to a degree, I imagine, because you were doing it in your own time. So it must have had some sort of beneficial sort of after effects for you.
I think so. And also when I was writing, I was like, oh yeah, like this exercise, like let me re-practice that. So it was really just kind of getting in. And I think this, so far in my writing career, this is the only book I've turned in a little bit early, which I was very proud of. And I credit that to being such a wonderful subject to write about.
Well, you mentioned other books. You've got other stuff coming out. Give us a little idea of what we've got to come from you over the next few months.
Yeah, I have my first children's book coming out, which I'm very excited about. It's a Star Wars picture book set in the Galaxy's Edge and on the 2. And that will be available exclusively from Target, who I hope will have that online so people can get it no matter where they are.
Yeah.
And it's the art is by Anna Davis Gordon. Oh my gosh, I should mention something I haven't with the Jedi Mind, that Christina Chung, who also contributed art to Star Wars Women of the Galaxy, did just some lovely, I think, soothing, calming illustrations for the Jedi Mind. And I'm so glad. I'm telling people, like, when you get the book, flip through and look at all the pictures first, number one, and then you can go back and read it however you want. And then also coming up the same day the Jedi Mind is out, I have my first, my fiction debut. I have a short story in the upcoming From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back, which I'm really excited about. And I also think we actually get to talk about our stories relatively soon publicly. So I can't wait.
And is it early next year, Art of Galaxy's Edge?
Oh, yes. Next year that is supposed to come out, The Art of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which is just chock full of, I've been just kind of in the final stages of that project, and the art in it is incredible.
Yeah.
That will be out in April of 2021.
Fantastic. We're looking forward to all of it. We will definitely have you, if we can get you, because you're going to be so busy over the next few months. We might not be able to get you, but if we can, we'll definitely have you on again to chat about whatever's coming out. But for now, thanks so much for your time, and enjoy the weather.
Thank you. You enjoy your weather. I'll trade you some rain for some sunshine any day, my friend.
We'll meet in the middle of the Atlantic. I think it's quite nice out there at the moment.
Perfect.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Canon Fodder. If you want to be part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com and download the Fanthatracks app to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. And remember to comment, like, share and subscribe on all our social medias at Fanthatracks. Leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcaster or smart speaker of choice.